Hello and welcome back to this channel. My name's Emily and I love to talk about books, and it has certainly been a while since we've talked about books. Some recent changes in my life have definitely caused me to do a lot of reflection on everything from my career to my hobbies and everything in between, and I think that combined with the beginning of the year and New Year's resolutions makes for a perfect time to think about and talk about goals and goal setting and hobbies and how these things intertwine and where they should intertwine and where maybe we should be a little bit easier on ourselves and practice self-compassion and not set our expectations so high and not get disappointed in ourselves. That was kind of a long introduction. The rest of the video is just gonna be a little bit of a yap session, a little bit of a conversation about goals, a catch up, if you will, because it's been so long, and I have another video in the works, and everything that I read in 2024 video. Maybe in Q2 we will share everything that I read in 2024. The turnaround time, not the fastest. I think that with everything going on in the world, I've felt that it's really important for me to read books with more substance, more banned books, more serious books, if you will, instead of books that may feel a little bit more lighthearted, a little bit easier to read, a little bit faster to read. And I don't necessarily think that that's right or wrong. I don't think that there's one way to look at things or go about things. I certainly would never, ever condone reading for fun, reading for pleasure. It's just something that I've been working on in my relationship with reading and thinking about what I want to be reading, especially because a really big goal of mine is to read books that are already on my shelf. I've got a really great physical TBR that has probably like 50 to 60 books on it, which I posted pictures of on TikTok and got so many comments of recommendations. It was my most viewed TikTok before I deleted the app, which we'll get into in a little bit because that definitely helped me prioritize some of these books. My main goal for 2025 reading was to read more books on my shelf. With that naturally comes reading some more books that are classics, modern classics, dystopian fictions, non-fictions, and kind of everything in between, more philosophical fictions, just books that are heavy, books that I know that are going to take longer than some other books. And I'm definitely still going to intersperse like quote unquote fun books, because I don't ever think that a hobby should be work, and I want to still have fun with reading, which I did pick up a book that I think looks really fun called Masters of Death by Olivie Blake. I hope that's how you say her name, because I was talking about this author with one of my friends and I had tried to read Alone with You in the ether and just didn't love it, but this book has been calling my name for a while now. I keep seeing it on bookshelves in bookstores. I saw it in paperback at half price and it really called to me to the point where I had to buy it. So I think I'm gonna start this really soon. I'm reading All About Love by Bell Hooks, which is a self-help book, not my typical favorite genre, but we're reading that with my Discord book club. I still have my qualms with self-help, but do think that it's important to be reading self-help books by women of color instead of by white men. So I think that if and when I read more into that genre, because I'm definitely going to need a break after this book, I will not be reading self-help by white men. Atomic Habits ruined my life and made it better at the same time, but it definitely contributed to feeling like I have to be so productive in my hobbies, if that makes sense. It rewired my brain in such a way that I thought, okay, I can do anything if I just set daily habits, but it kind of made some of my hobbies and some things that bring me a lot of joy feel more like work and something to cross off of a to-do list. And I don't ever want to feel like that with something that is done in my leisure time and that I haven't monetized. I don't want to feel the same way about my work that I get paid for that I do my hobbies, because I just don't think that that's a healthy relationship with hobbies for me personally. I do think that it's important to challenge myself, and I think that it's great to set goals and realize your goals, and it can be incredibly fulfilling to do so in your personal and professional life, but there's a time and place for it, just like with everything. The book that I'm currently reading, I stole from my mom's house, and it's Bluets by Maggie Nelson, and this is a really short little book of poetry that I am enjoying so much. I think that my reading goals this year are going to be to diversify the genres that I read. I want to read more memoirs. I want to read what's on my shelf, just like books that make me a smarter and better person instead of books that I'm just reading to hit a reading goal, a numbers reading goal. I think that those two things are not mutually exclusive, of course, but I want to prioritize quality over quantity for sure. I did have a conversation about this with my friend in terms of feeling like I should read a certain thing, and she pointed out that there's no need to read every single dystopian fiction novel, and while that wasn't necessarily my original plan and is just something that I don't think would be feasible or enjoyable for me at all, being a mood reader and being someone who does like to read to escape and likes to read for beautiful writing, I would never want to read only books like 1984, but I think that reading more poetry, reading more memoirs, reading more nonfiction where it is applicable, and then just reading more books that I know that I'm gonna love. I just finished The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang, which will bring me to my next point very shortly about the TikTok that I made and everyone's feedback on the books that I had on my shelf. Essentially, I wanna be more intentional, more selective, identify types of books that I really love so that I can go down certain rabbit holes and get more of a full understanding of a certain genre that I know that I like, and kind of niche down and figure out my individual tastes as a reader, especially individual tastes as a reader outside of what is popular. Of course, I love popular book talk books. I think it's great to be in the conversation. I make YouTube videos talking about books, so of course I'm still going to keep up with, you know, what is trending if it fits what I like. But I think also just having discretion, knowing the certain types of books that I'm not gonna like and not making myself read them just because they're popular, or maybe waiting a little bit to see once the hype dies down if it's still something that I'm interested in. I do think that reading banned books in order to continue to advocate for less censorship is super important, because it's really hard to understand the nuance and why books should not be banned, and to really stand up for having these books in schools and libraries. It's really hard to do that, almost impossible if you haven't read them, and I think that that's a big part of the problem, and I won't get into the problem with censorship and banned books in this little yap. That's not a soapbox that I feel the need to stand up on right now. I did make a video about banned books, and so did my friend Marissa, so I'll put both of those in the description if you want to kind of hear our thoughts on banned books. But I do think it's really, really important to know what is in these books so that we can challenge book bans and challenge people saying that these shouldn't be in libraries. There's a lot of talk about monetizing hobbies, having a side hustle, and how we can kind of like almost optimize ourselves as people as if we are a brand. That is kind of nuts if you really think about it and start to let yourself rabbit hole about it. But I think that monetizing hobbies is really adjacent to setting like performance goals for leisure activities. To me, reading is something that I can do when I am relaxing. I'm rotting in bed, I'm bringing a book with me and I'm gonna read it. And setting a performance goal, a KPI to hit for something that you're doing purely out of enjoyment, and especially when there are so many different factors that go into reading and what motivates people to read. If you're reading short books, if you're reading long books, I mean, you can set all different types of goals, but having an activity KPI for a leisure activity is insane. There's definitely a way to set goals and have a healthy relationship with goals and let it be something that motivates you to engage with your hobby more often, especially in terms of if you're wanting to replace scroll time with reading. I think that setting goals for reading that do look like KPIs can be really healthy in that situation, but I do think that we have to be super mindful when it comes to optimizing our hobbies, because it should be fun. It shouldn't feel like a chore. And yes, some books are going to feel like chores, and I think that it's great to challenge yourself to read something that maybe feels like you have more of a relationship with a certain book that you would if you were forced to read a book in school. I think that it's still great to push yourself, but I do think that we should be enjoying our hobbies at the end of the day. I think for the past 4 or 5 years, I've set my goal to read 52 books in a year, because I just love that number of reading a book a week, essentially. I think that it is super accessible for me when you keep in mind that I'm listening to audiobooks when I clean, I'm listening to audiobooks when I walk my dog sometimes. Sometimes I'm reading a physical book when I walk my dog. I'm reading before bed every night. I think that 52 books isn't something that feels like a chore as a goal. And I also didn't hit it for like the first 3 to 4 years that I set this goal. And I was never upset that I didn't hit it, because I still read a lot, and ultimately I just want to be consistently reading. And if I read 50 books instead of 52, or 25 books instead of 52, and they're more intentional or they're longer. My dog is literally like being the biggest. Show you her. That's what my hand's doing on the side. And this is her little nose. Setting a goal that's high and still achieving something is valuable, but I do think that we just have to be willing and intentional with practicing forgiveness for ourselves and practicing grace and compassion and knowing that some goals don't have to be hit. Maybe that's a controversial thing to say, but the purpose of some goals isn't necessarily to hit that goal exactly. It's more to become a certain type of person or have a certain type of behavior more ingrained in your life. And if your goal is to read 20 books and you read 19, but that's more than you've read in your entire life, then I think that that's a success, even if you don't hit that number. And I think that sometimes with really specific goals, we just get caught up in it. It just warrants kind of a conversation with yourself, just kind of thinking about, am I doing this for the number or am I doing this for the love of reading? And is the number helping me love reading more, or is it detracting from my love of my hobby? And if it's the latter, then maybe we just nix the reading goals and just read. Groundbreaking. Going back to the TikTok of my TBR, I will put a screenshot here of my physical TBR and let you guys take a look, and I would love to hear your thoughts. I posted a TikTok that said, please convince me to read books for my physical TBR. Which ones did you love? Which should I sell? What's at the top of the list? And this TikTok received 9,000 likes and 1,855 comments. Some of these comments had 2 to 3 books in them, and so I did what your normal book-loving analyst would do, and I put every single one of these comments into a spreadsheet. There's no easy way to do this that I found. I did this manually. I also assigned a value of the ratings, so if someone said that they've thought about a book every day since they read it, and it felt really sincere, that would get a 3. If someone just mentioned the title, that would get a 1. And then if someone said, don't read X book, it got minus points. Once I had all of the comments of the books in the spreadsheet, as well as the weight of each comment, I made a few different little tier ranking charts. I then looked at the data in 3 different ways. I looked at the total strength of the rating, so this incorporated the weight of each rating as well as the number of mentions. I looked just at the number of mentions, and then I also looked at the average strength. So I kind of had 3 slightly different views so that I could see what's at the top of the list. In terms of number of mentions, Educated was at the very top of the list with 169 mentions. Tender as the Flesh came in second with 122 mentions, but it only had an average strength of a 0.8 compared to Educated's average strength of a 1.2. So there were a lot of people talking about Tender as the Flesh, but there were also a good handful of people saying not to read Tender as the Flesh. In third place in terms of number of mentions came The Poppy War, but this book had one of the higher average strengths of a 1.3. I actually already did read Educated and The Poppy War based on these recommendations, and neither one of them failed me. TikTok, you guys were so right. If you commented on that and you mentioned either of those books, thank you. Educated was a gorgeous 5-star memoir that definitely will stick with me for a long time. Specifically, when she said something along the lines of reading things that she didn't understand was part of her education, and just like allowing herself to read something without fully understanding it. That really stuck with me because sometimes it can be intimidating to pick up a book where I think that there are going to be gaps in my knowledge and gaps in my understanding, and I'm reminded that that's okay to not understand everything totally, completely upon reading it, because if you do understand every single thing you read and you never have to think about anything, you're not learning as much as you could be if you were challenging yourself a little more. So not being afraid to not understand and not know something, just the way that she put it and her real life experience was incredible. If you don't know what Educated is about, essentially this book is the story of a girl who grew up in a family that kept her out of school because they had really extreme beliefs in their religion, anti-government. So she was basically raised in this cult. Her parents were very anti-education, and she took it upon herself a couple of her brothers, I believe, took it upon themselves as well to go out and get an education, and she ended up getting a great education, and she's an incredible writer. I think that the most special thing about the book is at the beginning, you are at the beginning of her life, and she is not in school. She's kind of struggling throughout the beginning of her life, dealing with multiple forms of abuse, and you know that the outcome of the story is going to be positive because the writing is so stunning. And so you know that she's going to get a great education and go on to be an amazing writer because you're already reading this book from her. So I think that that undertone of hope, knowing that the outcome was going to be positive and that she was going to receive her education and ultimately be extremely successful as an author, really helped me get through some of the more tough areas of the book that felt like not real life, even though it was her real life, because they were so insane. Great memoir to read, not light at all, very worth it. Really made me not take my own education for granted. It's such a beautiful, special privilege to be able to read and write really well, to have an education, to have a degree, to have the ability to learn and go acquire more information. I had a family friend growing up that said that my education was the only thing that no one would be able to take from me. That really stuck with me. Like, I think about that all the time, and that's informed so many of my academic choices. And I think that having that in the back of my mind and then reading a book like Educated was just really special and affirming, and it made me feel so proud of the author. I've never been so proud of someone that I've never met before. That was a spiel, but I would definitely recommend that book. And that's one that had been on my shelf. The Poppy War I just finished, and that was also an incredible book. R.F. Kuang, I'm a new fan. I cannot believe that that was her debut novel because it reads like someone who has published dozens of books. She's such an incredible writer, and I'm really, really excited for her next book where she's going to be writing nonsense literature. She was comparing it to Alice in Wonderland in her interviews. Just having a tiny taste of how brilliant she is from just having read The Poppy War makes me so excited for Catabasis. I'm definitely going to be reading into some of the books that I've seen others recommend read in preparation for Catabasis. If I can find a screenshot of it, I will put it here. But that is definitely going to be something that I really look forward to and probably talk about a lot. That was a tangent. In terms of number of mentions, in fourth place was East of Eden by John Steinbeck. The comments on East of Eden were just so positive. This had a 1.5 average strength, and I believe that that was the highest in terms of average strength. And then the fifth most number of mentions was The Giver, which I've actually already read. I read it in school, but I had it on my physical TBR because I wanted to reread it. So The Giver was getting a lot of love. In terms of total strength, Educated also came in first place here with a 208. East of Eden came in second with a 130. The Poppy War came in third with a 128. Tender as the Flesh came in fourth place with a 104. And then 1984 came in fifth place with a 102. In terms of average strength, East of Eden was the highest with a 1.5. Juniper and Thorn was only mentioned 24 times, but it had an average strength of 1.4. The Seas was only mentioned 3 times, but it had an average strength of 1.3. I don't think that's enough data to be conclusive about the strength of that recommendation, but it definitely looks like a shorter book, so I think that that will be something that will be really good in between, like an East of Eden, a Poppy War, one of the longer books on the list. We had a few different 1.3s. This is like the average rounded. Picture of Dorian Gray was also 1.3. The Poppy War was also 1.3. And then The Devil in Dark Water, only mentioned 15 times, also a 1.3. And then several 1.2s and 1.1s. We Have Always Lived in the Castle was something that had a 1.1. It only had 26 mentions. I did read this with my book club last month, and it was a really interesting read because my book club has 5 people in it, and the ratings were 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, 4 star, and 5 star. I gave it a 5 star, and then some people increase their score a little bit post-discussion because I think that it's one of those books that lends itself really well to a book club and definitely gets better with discussion, talking about it with people and like diving into the themes. It's a gothic thriller. It's pretty eerie. Shirley Jackson is just a great author that I've really liked both of her books that I've read. We Have Always Lived in the Castle and The Haunting of Hill House. And I definitely want to read The Lottery and some of her other work. Any of her other work, really. I've really loved everything I've read by her. I was really excited to have this TikTok of all of my little TikToks that I post blow up because I feel like I got such rich data that was so personalized to me and the books that I have. It definitely got me more excited to read the books that I have, because I feel like when books sit on my shelf for a long time, they just become less interesting because they're not new, which that's capitalism, baby. But it definitely refreshed my interest in some of these books that I know are good books because I bought them, because I know that they're good books. Like, these are books that I have purchased or that have been gifted to me, but primarily books that I have purchased because I wanted to read them already. And then they sat there, didn't feel like the right time, felt a little bit too, like too much of a commitment. Some of them are longer. Some of them are more like aspirational reads, I would say. I'll definitely be mood reading. I've already added a few books to my shelf, which is really annoying of me because I want to read some of the books I have. But if I keep adding to my shelf, I'm always just gonna have like 50 to 60 books I haven't read, which is not a problem. If there's anything on my physical TBR that you recommend over the others, I would love to hear it. I love to hear people's recommendations, not only because it helps guide my choices, but also because it makes me just more excited about what I already have. And yeah, I think that for this, like, I just needed a fantasy that feels more easy to read than the Poppy War, because the Poppy War took me about 3 weeks, I want to say, to fully get through. And towards the end, I was really into it, listening to the audiobook as well as reading the physical book, going back and forth, because I just wanted to know what happened next so bad. But I wanted something that would just be a little bit easier to start, and this seemed like a little bit easier of a writing style to read, so I picked it up. If you've read it, let me know what you think. I think that I have a lot on my shelf that makes sense for me to read at this point in time in my life, and that I'm excited to read. I just do want to be conscious and make sure I don't burn myself out. There were 40 books that I have on my list from being mentioned on TikTok, so I think that if I can read 30, 25 of those, 25? If I can read 20 to 30 of the books that I have on this list, and I've already read now 3, if I can read 20 to 30, I think that I'll be really happy with that. And maybe if I can get the books on my shelf down to 20, that's a stretch goal, but I would definitely love that, because I would really like to get to eventually a place where I only have 3 or 4 books that I haven't read, so that way I'm a little bit more justified in purchasing new books, and I can be a little bit more of a mood reader, where I finish a book and feel justified in going and purchasing another one, because right now when I finish a book, I feel like I should read something that's already on my shelf. But it's a good feeling to finish a book and think like, oh, I should go buy another one because I don't have one. And I'm going to Half Price Books, and I'm supporting independent bookstores, and I am utilizing the library in Libby, but I think it would be good to not have this like little voice in my head telling me, well, you already have great books, you should read those, instead of going and choosing a new one. So let me know your thoughts on that. I think that that's going to be more of a goal for me this year than reading a certain number of books, but I did still set my Goodreads goal to 52. I do want to switch to Storygraph if y'all are on Storygraph, because the Goodreads update, I did, since posting that TikTok and analyzing the data from that TikTok, delete my TikTok app. TikTok is not banned in the United States anymore, but you can't get the app anymore for it, and I've missed making TikToks a lot. I still have TikTok Studio, so I technically could make TikToks, but it just doesn't feel the same. And I was on like a 3-month kick of making TikToks and really enjoying more short form content and having an idea and being able to act on it and post it that same day. Whereas with YouTube, it truly takes so much longer to have an idea, flush it out in some kind of an outline so that you don't get just a rambly video like the one that you're watching right now. Record the video and then edit the video and post the video and make the thumbnail. Like, it's just so much of a longer process. So I feel like making short form content was really fun, and it was really, really easy to engage with other readers on TikTok versus YouTube. I think that you naturally just get fewer views on YouTube because it's longer form and it's more of a commitment, versus TikTok, you can have 100,000 views on a random video even if you have no followers. So I miss that, but I do think that long form content and the connections that you make there are typically deeper connections, even though there are fewer of them. So again, back to that idea of quality over quantity. I'm happy to be back here. I'm happy to be posting. If you're seeing this, just know that I finally motivated myself to edit and that I'm really excited about that, and that I'm really excited to just talk to y'all more and put more of my time that I was putting into TikTok into YouTube. Let me know what you want to see. I have January wrap up kind of in my brain because I really liked the books that I read last month. I would like to kind of do like January, February wrap up at the end of this month, and then eventually also post all my books from 2024 because I know that those videos can be really fun to watch, even if they're not as in-depth about each book. And it's just fun to look back at everything that you read in a year. So thank you guys so much for watching my rambling. I have enjoyed our Kiki. I can't wait to talk to y'all so soon about more books and maybe more spreadsheets. Thank you so much again. I missed you. Bye.